afternoon and welcome to a very special interview show of the Prode. Today we turn our attention to one of the most sensitive and complex issues in contemporary Asia, the crisis in Tibet. At the intersection of geopolitics, human rights, and regional security, the Tibet stories reflects both the enduring struggle of a people to preserve their language, religion, and culture, and the strategic calculations of major power. From Beijing's dominant policies to the global debate over human rights, from the militarization of the plateau to the future of Dalai Lama's succession, Tibet remains a focal point with profound consequences for Asia and beyond. To unpack these critical questions, I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Jayadeva Ranade, a former additional secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat of the Government of India. He is the president of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy and a member of India's National Security Advisory Board. With his decades of experience in national security, intelligence, and China studies, Mr. Ranade offers unparalleled insight into how Tibet shapes India's strategic environment and the broader regional balance. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good morning, should I say? It's good afternoon here.
So I would like to begin the conversation by asking that how do China's assimilation-oriented policies in Tibet, particularly restrictions on language, religion, and cultural expression, affect long-term preservation of Tibetan identity, and what policy options exist for addressing these concerns at an international level?
China, I think this is a very pertinent question that you raised because the steps that China is taking essentially erase Tibetan culture over the longer term. There are two things that they are doing apart from the repression of the Tibetans itself. They are trying to uh, indoctrinate the monks into following a policy whereby what they call adapting Tibetan Buddhism to socialism with Chinese characteristics. In other words, they're trying to change the nature, but the efforts are on to the extent that some are, and despite the fact that some are intrusive, to the extent that they have party cadres deployed in monasteries and they have party cadres policing the monks in the monasteries. That's one aspect. The second is that till recently, the various schools that were set up for Tibetans, Tibetan schools, if I may call them that, they were allowed to teach in Tibetan. I mean, that was the medium of instruction. But as of last year, the policy is to have the medium of instruction as Mandarin, Chinese, in other words. So they're slowly removing the Tibetans' ability to read their own scriptures and their history. Because if you're not able to read Tibetan, you're not able to speak Tibetan, you are distanced and finally removed from your own culture because the books and all are written in Tibetan. So that is the step they've done. Of course, these are still in the initial stages because from the area of Tibet, which a large portion of which is now in the adjoining provinces like Qinghai, Sichuan, etc., they have now started this practice within the Tibet Autonomous Region. So these are, of course, they are long-term steps, but they are steps. The third, to build up what they call the sense of Chinese nationalism. They have started what are called boarding schools, where they ask young children or they pick up young children and send them to these boarding schools. And their parents are able to meet them once a week on a Sunday or something like that. So, that's another way where in these schools they learn Mandarin and they're subjected to indoctrination of socialism with Chinese characteristics and Xi Jinping thought, etc. So, these are the steps that they're taking at one level. The second level, to see that at home, the Dalai Lama is not worshipped or he is not discussed. They have what is called a pairing program, where one Tibetan cadre or one cadre of the Tibet Autonomous Region is paired with one family. And he sort of goes there. Of course, I understand he carries his own rations, etc. But you can imagine in a small house, usually one room or two rooms, you have another person living in. He's privy to everything that goes on. So these are the kind of steps that they've taken, which I think are designed to see that secessionist activities or thoughts which are not in conformity with what the Chinese leadership wants, Chinese communist leadership wants, they don't exist.
Yeah, now coming to the India's angle. So, given India's historical, cultural, and political ties to Tibet, what role should New Delhi play in supporting Tibet's cultural survivor and rights while balancing its own security concerns and relations with Beijing?
Well, no country has recognized Tibet as an independent entity. In fact, the United Kingdom, which at one stage had spoken about suzerainty rather than sovereignty over Tibet, they changed their policy, I think, when Miliband was the foreign secretary. And so they also now concede that China had sovereignty over Tibet, which factually is incorrect. They had a 100-year period where they were totally independent. They had their own coins, they had their own stamps, they had their own rules and regulations. But anyway, that is history. Today, there's none of that. But what India has done is we have given the Dalai Lama and all the Tibetans who came across with him as refugees sanctuary in India. And not only sanctuary, we have allowed them to, we've helped them with creating settlements. We've helped them in doing business. So they've, shall I say, I would not know how to use the term, maybe not really prospered in that sense, but still they're leading much better lives than probably what they were. And they're safe and secure in India. Large number of them, of course, are looking for greener pastures, and they have migrated to Australia, Canada, UK, etc. Also, the numbers here have now come down, but there's still a reasonable number. But the Dalai Lama is here, and so are the heads of all the other Tibetan religious sects, except now the Karmapa sect, where Ugen Thinley, one of the contenders, whom many people, in fact, accept as the Gyalwa Karmapa or the head of the sect. Others contest it, but whatever it is, he's not in India presently, but the others are all. So that is the situation. I think we are assisting the Central Tibetan Administration, which is in Dharamsala, which looks after the interests of the Tibetan people, and helping them in various ways in the schools that they have set up, in the welfare outfits that they have created, etc. So I think India has done quite a lot. Of course, we have given them the land and all that. So we have done quite a lot. In terms of preserving the scriptures, the culture, we are doing our best in India to, there is a Tibet house here which has, education, etc. They teach Tibetan to people who are interested. There are research facilities. So those things have been done. But if you're talking about beyond that, then we have to draw a fine line, between what becomes interference in another country's internal affairs or not. And I think we are a bit sensitive to that. We have our own issues with China, as you are aware. So, that is what we are doing. So I would say on some, we are doing the most uh, than any other country, and we have managed to, with of course the Dalai Lama's support and his own initiatives, we have kept alive or helped to keep alive Tibetan culture, language, etc. now for almost 80 years. So I think a lot has been done. We can always quibble about more should be done or not, but that's reality has to step in, and geopolitics of course has a role there.
Yeah, now coming to the role of the United States. So, how significant is US supports towards Tibet, and how significant is US legislation such as Resolve Tibet Act in shaping international attention on Tibet? And what further steps would Washington consider in order to promote Tibetan rights and autonomy without escalating tensions with China? And how do you see the recent Donald Trump regime in order to, in order to protect Tibet's own culture and identity?
Well, the US has naturally it's a superpower, and so what it does has a lot of significance. It has a lot of impact, and they have been supporting the Tibetan cause. The U.S. Congress has been supporting the Tibetan cause, and at regular intervals there have been, sense of the Congress resolutions, etc., passed, including the Tibet Resolve Act at critical time. So the U.S. support has been, I think, of great value and assistance, including financial assistance to the Dalai Lama and his establishment. They've also accepted a number of Tibetans inside the USA. It is unfortunate that outfits like the Voice of America and Radio Free Asia, the Tibetan services, I believe, have been suspended or scrapped. But nevertheless, this kind of support continues. There are also a lot of people inside the USA, individuals who are supporting the Tibetan cause with finances and other ways. So I think they are getting a lot of support. About Trump, I think he's unpredictable, and one doesn't know what's really going to happen. Uh, we are aware that they have cut some of the assistance that they used to give. A little bit has been restored, but I'm sure the Tibetans are hoping and lobbying for restoration of the balance amount, because they literally they depend on the goodwill and the donations that come in. So I refer to subventions from the state also as donations here. So what the Americans have been giving has been of great value to them. But under Trump, one doesn't know. He seems to be, in fact, shall I say, kowtowing to the Chinese quite a lot. A number of steps that he has taken, people feel have been, sort of yielding to the Chinese in various ways, including the latest telephone conversation that he had on TikTok, where he doesn't, except for changing some of the members of the board, nothing much is going to happen. The state of control remains as it was earlier. So I don't know what his policy towards Tibet will be. But having said that, let me also say that the Chinese have elevated the level of their level of concern on the Tibet issue. So they will react very strongly if any country takes a more proactive stand. And I think, given Trump's track record till now, I don't think he shows any indication of really contesting the Chinese or even backing the Tibetan cause strongly.
Yeah, and how do you see the support from other European nations and European Union as a whole in this whole crisis?
It's I think they have been supportive but discreet, except the Czech president who went and called on him in Dharamsala recently, which I think was quite a signal act being done by him. But the European countries are also, if one looks at it, in a cold, mercenary fashion, they're dependent on the Chinese market, and they do need China for their own well-being and their profits and their revenues. So there will be a limit to what they can do and what they will do, and I think here they will take a cue from the US. So depending on how bold or assertive a stance Washington takes, we might see the Europeans following suit. But let me add here that mere urgings from Washington or from Trump, I don't think is going to be enough, because already we see there's a lot of dissatisfaction in Europe with Trump and his regime and in other countries. And they're all now looking for alternative methods by which they can trade and also build up their own capacities.
Yeah, and to what extent do continuing human rights concerns in Tibet, including religious repression, forced relocations, and limit on free expression, undermine China's global image and soft power? And how should democratic governments around the world integrate these issues in their foreign policy toward Beijing?
I think, to be realistic, I think today, in today's day and age, there's a lot of turbulence in the world as it is, economic and otherwise. And everyone is looking at that. So, human rights issues, I mean, I know that I'm sort of probably not in sync with the feeling of a lot of people, but while people may pay lip service to human rights, etc., I don't see many who are going to actually, as they say, walk the talk or put the money where the mouth is on human rights issues. Yes, they will raise it, they will discuss it, they'll push up to a point, but that's it. I don't see them really pushing strongly. Again, because of the economic factors. That is how I view it. They will continue to be raised in international fora and etc. etc. But I think Beijing realizes that today it also has, shall I say, slightly more clout than it had earlier in these matters.
Yeah, and how do China's expanding military presence and infrastructure development in Tibet alter the regional balance of power, particularly vis-a-vis India, and what policy responses are available to India and its partners to safeguard their strategic interests?
Well, China is expanding westwards. The first, I think, very concrete signal was the establishment of the Western Theatre Command in 2015, 2016. And since then, there has been a reiteration of that. They have, it's the largest theatre command, and now it has been placed at number two level in terms of receiving the military hardware, the latest military hardware. They've got the J-20 aircraft, they've got new missiles, etc. So it's ported theatre command, and it's a vast expanse, as you know, Tibet, Xinjiang, etc. And they're aiming to go westwards. One of the charters of the Western Theatre Command is also to protect the personnel and the assets of the Belt and Road Initiative, particularly this China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and its proposed extension, which will be into Afghanistan. And then I guess the Belt and Road will extend into the Central Asian republics. So that is what the scope of the Western Theatre will be, and the PLA is preparing to safeguard all this. So even if it's not PLA, the Western Theatre Command, it will be the PLA which will have the mandate to protect Chinese assets. So I think there is undoubtedly an expansion of Chinese military power throughout the region. As far as India is concerned, India is holding the line on its own boundary and resisting Chinese pressure and intrusions. You would have seen what happened in 2017 when they tried to come into Budo Club by building a road and we blocked it. And that standoff continued for about 78 days, where we didn't back down. Similarly, now in April 2020, when they came in, we also counter-built up, if I may say. And so there's a lot of deployment of troops, which still continues. But in certain places, there has been some disengagement, which is a good sign. We are hoping that we'll be able to take it further. The Chinese also have indicated that they will probably be reducing tensions. So one hopes that that happens. But otherwise, there is no alternative to my mind except to try and negotiate with the Chinese, to try and talk to them and persuade them that there are no challenges from us, and there haven't been actually in real terms, and that we would like peace on the border. That's what China and India need for their own development. So I think that message China is understanding. And now with what Trump has done in the economic and trade sphere, I think China would be more receptive to this message.
Yeah, and given Tibet's role as both a buffer region and the source of Asia's major river systems, how does its geopolitical significance shape regional security dynamics in South and Central Asia? And what strategic policies should neighboring states adopt in response?
Well, that's a question that I think is occupying the minds of many of the neighboring states. Not so much as a buffer, because with modern technology, etc., the role of a buffer has sort of changed now. But as you pointed out, it has a pivotal position as far as what is commonly called the third pole, the source of most of the rivers in Asia, the major river systems. So whether you have the Indus, the Brahmaputra, the Yangtze, etc., they're all glacier-fed rivers emanating from Tibet, the Mekong. So these are, this is the, shall I say, an advantage that China has, and but it hasn't yet shown a willingness to really, shall I say, cooperate with the other states. And the Mekong River nations, they are consistently complaining about how China is building dams in the upper reaches, and that is affecting the livelihoods of their own people. So that will continue. In India also, we have not seen really a willingness to share data and come forward. There is an opacity in the Chinese system which really complicates matters. So even on the Brahmaputra, about the river and the dams being built in the river, clarity hasn't yet come about on how many dams, what kind of dams, what exactly is going to happen, even on the biggest dam in the world that is proposed to be built around Medoc. So these are questions that come up, and these are complex questions. No easy solution in sight unless there is a bilateral discussion and a willingness of both sides to discuss an issue and be, I would say, more transparent about it.
Yeah, and now coming to the question of the succession of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So, why does the question of Tibet's political future, especially the succession of the Dalai Lama, carry both like moral and strategic weight for Asian stability? And how should policymakers around the world prepare for potential scenarios surrounding these succession?
Well, as I pointed out in response to your earlier questions, the Chinese are already preparing by imposing their version of socialism and trying to adapt Tibetan Buddhism, etc., to see that their writ runs without question throughout Tibet, and that the Tibetans accept the Chinese Communist Party's uh, rule, or as the Tibetans call it, occupation of Tibet. So they've been changing names of places, etc., and trying to impose their own systems. That will continue, and I don't think there is much that can be done about it. But the succession issue is something that troubles the Chinese quite a lot and is of concern, of course, because there are two issues involved here. If, and the Dalai Lama has now announced that he will go in for a reincarnation, and therefore the Chinese will also now produce a reincarnate, or at least their version of a reincarnate. But the Tibetan people will, I don't think they will accept that. They will go with whoever the Dalai Lama and his uh, followers accept as the next Dalai Lama, the 15th Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
So
Ah,
there's one potential uh, divergence or rift that we are already seeing in this case.
yeah, I would like to conclude the discussion by asking that what constructive role can international institutions and democratic governments play in supporting Tibet's cultural survival and political rights while avoiding escalation of a great power competition with China?
Well, there will be some escalation on the issue of the Dalai Lama's reincarnation, because the Tibetans will have to pick sides. The others, either uh, proactively or passively, will also have to pick sides in a way. So I don't, as I said, I don't see the Tibetans, at least the ones who are living in a free environment, supporting reincarnation selected by a communist regime, which is supposed to be atheist. So, in any case, I don't see that. They might claim that the Tibetans have supported, but those Tibetans are quite repressed and they don't really have a voice. So, here, what we may see and what we probably will see are the various Tibet support groups inside parliaments and outside uh, coming out in support of the reincarnation whom the Dalai Lama has designated and whom his people find, um, and the various centers, Buddhist centers spread around the world of the various sects. They would also probably come out and support um, the same reincarnation. So you will find this kind of situation. And as far as the countries are concerned, I think they will opt primarily for either not taking a side or saying, well, we don't interfere in religious matters. Or so, in other words, what they would be doing is passively or otherwise accepting the reincarnation whom the Tibetan people living in their countries or outside Tibet accept. So, in other words, uh, the majority will back, uh, whether they say it or not, the 15th Dalai Lama selected by the 14th Dalai
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your deep insights on Tibet and wider implications for Asia's future. This conversation has highlighted that how the Tibetan question is not only about the survival of a culture and a people, but also about regional stability, great power relations, and the choices that democracies must make in responding to China's policies. Tibet continues to stand at the crossroads of identity, geopolitics, and security, and the way these issues are addressed will shape Asia's strategic landscape in the years ahead. Thank you once again for your time.
Lama. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir.